Welcome to the Guerrilla Film Guide Podcast Roundtable Edition. This episode was recorded during the One Story, One Community celebration presented by Borland River Media and the Utah Film Center, and is titled Staring into the Void, Breaking Through to Your Story. This panel was moderated by Emily Robyn Clark, with guests Kristen Marie Jensen, Bethany Joy Burr, Chaz Evans, and Skye Emerson. We hope you enjoy.
Talented filmmakers. And yeah, just to kind of introduce everybody. So my name is Emily Clark, and I'll be moderating today. And just quick bio. So we have Bethany Joy Burr. She's from Springville, Utah. She's been a filmmaker for 10 years and a writer for as long as she can remember. Her short film Tubcake won Best Graduate Film at the U of U's Film Festival last fall. She's currently finalizing her first feature-length film. So congrats. And welcome, Bethany. And Skye. Hello, Skye. Skye's an award-winning screenwriter and filmmaker. She's been nationally recognized for her writing achievement. She's won numerous awards. She was named a top 25 screenwriter to watch in 2020 by the International Screenwriters Association. So welcome, Skye. We also have Kristen here. She's been a professional film actor for nearly 20 years. She's had roles on ABC, Magnolia Pictures, the Paramount Network, and the Hallmark Channel. And in 2019, she wrote, produced, and directed her first short film, Lumeria. So welcome, Kristen. And then we also have Chaz Evans, fantastic filmmaker here. He's based in Utah. He's an award-winning filmmaker. He's worked on multiple projects as a writer, director, and producer, and he's here with his most recent film, Night of Adventure. So welcome, Chaz. So just get started. Bethany, my first question for you is, was there a specific moment in your life when you said, yes, I'm going to become a filmmaker? Like, this is kind of the path that I want to pursue.
There was sort of a specific moment. I grew up as a total book nerd. I wanted to be a writer. My undergraduate degree is in English and American literature with an emphasis in creative writing. So when I went to NYU as an undergraduate, I was sort of very focused on prose writing. But it was while I was there and spending hours and hours and hours writing papers in my dorm room that I would see students going down the hallway in groups carrying equipment. And little did I know NYU was like a premier film school. I started associating with some of these students and collaborating on projects. And as much as I loved writing, and I still love writing, it's a very solitary experience. So I was really drawn to the collaborative elements of film. So I started my journey in film started through writing, but I quickly realized that I wanted to go to film school for my graduate education to pursue what I sort of felt like was writing with an expansion pack, able to use color and composition and sound to further amplify these creative ideas. So that was sort of the moment. There was that moment where I looked in the hallway and I was like, I want to be doing that. And it changed the course of my whole life.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And I love how, like, the magic of filmmaking, it just finds you, as a creative. Okay. And let's see, this question is for Kristen. What is your writing process like, and how do you approach storytelling?
So since Lumeria is my first go at this, it's been and continues to be just a learning experience. And I have found that writing an outline is the most helpful thing ever. So it started as like 1 paragraph synopsis to a 3 paragraph for each act to breaking down like the 8 sequences. And yeah, it's just been really helpful.
Awesome. So you do the sequencing approach?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Very cool. And let's see. So, Skye, tell us a little bit about how you begin the process of ideation. So what does that look like for you when you start working on a new project? And where do your ideas come from?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me. And I apologize for my location. I'm actually on my way now to California for a last minute meeting. So halfway in between, sorry about that. I've been trying to work out my Wi-Fi. So hopefully everyone can hear me. But yeah, ideation, I am a big fan of research. Any story I write is basically a jump down a rabbit hole of research. And I just have to know everything about the subject matter. And so it's actually usually weeks or months of research before I ever start writing the story, because I want to know if it's in a certain place. I want to know all about that town. If it's about a certain person, you know, living or deceased or fictional, I need to know everything about them and their career and their backstory. So I do a ton of research when I come up with an idea for a story, and I think it helps, you know, to be able to really pinpoint details. My stories are very, very detailed, and that usually comes from the research. So ideation always involves weeks or months of research for me to really understand the story that I want to tell, the people that I want to speak about, the world that I want to show. So my path is really research, and then once I feel like I've nailed those details, I feel like the idea just is strengthened from there. So I'll start with the kernel of an idea, and the research, I think, really brings it to fruition.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And so, Chaz, since we're talking about breaking through to the story, you know, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are for making when you made your first film? And what do you think the biggest hurdles are for new filmmakers just trying to break into the industry?
Probably trying to find a story that you could still push through, like all the hardships of going over the hill, essentially. I mean, if you're writing like a feature draft for an example, like I always struggle with like the second act more than anything. And I know how it's going to end and I know how it's going to begin, but it's just the whole second act, and that's usually the longest part of the script too. So I mean, as long as you could push through that, be it a short film or a feature film, like, and stick your ground, you know, and be open to change, I guess, and be open to, like, you might have an idea of how a story might come to you, but you know, it's going to change down the road, essentially. And so I just say be open.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. Well, you guys are awesome, by the way. And yeah, so, you know, I just keep thinking, like, this is more for female filmmakers here. Are you excited for the future? You know, what does it feel like being a female filmmaker in 2020? Tumultuous year, a lot going on. And, you know, are you excited for the future? Are you nervous? And what do you think the future of filmmaking will be like for women in film?
I'll comment really fast. While I was making my film last year, several of the crew members were asking me, like, do you think that you're going to be entitled to a bunch of stuff because you're a woman now? And I was like, no, I think that if my film, you know, it'll speak for itself. Like, you know, but I do think that we're actually given some opportunities now that we weren't given before. So I am excited about that.
Very cool. Awesome. Me too. And yeah, Bethany, what about you? Are you excited for the future? What are your plans for the future with filmmaking?
I think it's a really exciting time to be a female filmmaker. I am a filmmaker and also an academic. And I recently just got a professorship at a university teaching film. And through this process, I was told even over and over again, still how rare it is to have like a female production teacher at a university. You'll see more female film studies, but in writing, but still in production, it's very rare for, you know, a female to be at the helm, but we're starting to see it more and more. In my research, I really focus on female writer, director, performers, and we're really starting to see an insurgence of these types of voices. I've been watching I May Destroy You on HBO, and seeing Michaela Cole and her kind of tour de force, and I kind of follow these voices, and I think there's just sort of an insurgence happening right now, and I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm excited to educate female filmmakers too. And I also sort of specialize in memoiric cinema, personal cinema, and I think women are sort of uniquely situated to take on very personal subject matter. And I think we're starting to see that more and more, especially through consumer access to technology and our ability to really take control of the technology and put our stories and our voices out there. So I am excited to do more research about women who are doing this, and continue to make my own films which delve into sort of sharing my experience and my sort of intersectional identity as a female filmmaker.
Awesome, thank you so much. Did we? That was a great answer. I'm excited to see your next project. By the way, I loved your film. Where did we lose Skye?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. For some reason,
Yeah.
okay. Didn't see you for a second. Hey,
Oh.
yeah. So tell us a little bit. So you're a fantastic screenwriter and working a lot of cool projects. Yeah, tell us, I guess, what you think for the future. What are your hopes? Or
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and I love the answers that came before me. I definitely appreciate that. I think what's being recognized is the ability for females to tell female-driven stories, and I think that's really important for every voice to be able to tell their authentic stories, and just gives a new perspective and a new experience. And I write female protagonists, typically female-driven stories, female-centric stories. So it's nice to be able to speak to that and have an industry recognize that it's probably a good idea to have these stories be told by women, and there might be some different levels of understanding that take place there. And I think it's really exciting, and I'm definitely seeing some very powerful change happening and movements happening. I'm also a member of Women in Film in Hollywood, and they're doing amazing things. My literary agency has many events for just their female filmmakers, which is great, and they're really supporting us and connecting us, and it's become, I think, a really nice hub for women to not only excel in this world, but to support each other in our advancement. So I see a lot of hope and a lot of opportunity that are coming about, and just voices that should be shared and that are finally getting a chance to be exposed. So I'm really excited. Yeah, definitely.
awesome, thank you. And tell us a little bit about your latest feature project.
Yeah. So most recently, I wrote. I'm adapting a novel. It's called When the Men Were Gone for my agency, and I'm really excited. It's a true story. I love biopics. It's about a woman in Texas in 1944 who, when all the men went to war, she became the high school football coach. And I love this story because 80 years later, we're still just seeing women start to be able to take on that role in the world. And it's amazing that things didn't really change, for so long, but she was doing this very novel thing. And we don't know about her. I mean, I've not encountered anyone that knew the name Tylene Wilson. We don't know the story. And so it's really exciting to share it. It's really neat to pull this story out of a small town in Texas and hopefully bring it to the screen. And I think those stories exist everywhere, which is really exciting. And again, another woman we can shine a light on and tell the world about. And I'm excited for other filmmakers, female filmmakers, to be able to do the same.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm excited to see that film. It sounds awesome.
Thank you.
And let's see here. Okay, so this is just more of a fun question for you guys. If you could tell any story with like no budget restraints or constraints or any, anything like that, like what would that story be?
I'll go. If I'm happy to go again.
No, you go. Yeah.
Well, I hope this doesn't reflect poorly in any way, but I did write. I have had some success with a script that I wrote while at UCLA about Sally Ride. Was the first female American astronaut in space. But my story is very specific to one year in her life when she investigated the Challenger explosion. And it's a really powerful story. I have a personal connection to this story as well because my grandfather worked at Morton Thiokol in Brigham City, where they built the Challenger space shuttle. And it deals with some things that were happening there and a conspiracy. And it's a really important story, and one that you can't find by Googling her or looking into it. It's really interesting. And it took a lot of research and, some local folks to help me come to the fruition of this story. And I actually got to know Sally Ride's sister in writing this. And there's some really important elements about her that the world doesn't know. And I think, and her heroism that is unknown. And that was her. And I think we just don't know it. It would be an expensive piece to make because it's period. This is the 80s. It's NASA. There's a lot going on. But I'd really love to see that made, not for me, but for Sally and her legacy and the story and the importance, the impact that she made that we just don't know about. Again, it's, I'm very much about shining a light on those things that I think we should know. And I think film, that's the job of film is to show us these things that we can and should know. And so I would love to see it made. Yeah, that's my dream.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And Chaz, quick question for you. How do you deal with the dreaded writer's block?
Well, I don't know. After we did Night of Adventure, I mean, I had a writer's block for like a good year and a half. And there's a Twitter follow or a writer, a screenwriter who I follow on Twitter, C. Robert Cargill, and he has like these daily tweets about like 1 page a day. Like you could have like 3 scripts done in a year. And so it was just kind of motivation like that, and just to push forward with it and to acknowledge that, because I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to like my first drafts even, and I think that holds me back a lot. So to be okay with acknowledging that every first draft is a shit first draft, and like knowing that you can go back and rewrite it,
Right.
and just getting the structure out there and then going back and doing it. So it's a matter of pushing through it. Right. I mean, ultimately, if you don't do anything with it, and if you just allow the block to stop you from writing, then you're letting that win, and then you're not being creative, which will put you further into a creative depression of sorts. So,
cool, good answer, thank you. And yeah, back to the other question. We had some other questions come in here. Kristen. If you could make any film with any budget, what would that be?
So my short film is a proof of concept for my dream feature film, and it could have a very large budget because it's period and fantasy. And so, that's what I would make. Lumeria, the feature of Lumeria. I will make it on whatever budget I can, but I mean, the sky's the limit with that one.
What about you, Bethany?
It's kind of hard to follow some of those ideas, but since I am primarily an autobiographical filmmaker, I've written versions of this script, and it's my personal story of a Mormon girl moving from small town Utah to New York City for college. and all the experiences that she has that she's never experienced, and falling in love with the wrong person, and sort of this coming of age story against the backdrop of New York City. I describe that time in my life as being, it felt like a movie to me. And so to be able to sort of personify the idea of how we romanticize our own sort of experiences, and how sometimes that leads us to making choices that aren't in our best interest, but makes it a better story somehow. That was the story I do. It would be a lot of locations in New York that I would not be able to have access to without a pretty awesome budget.
Very cool. Do you draw from David Lynch at all? Do you like some of his?
Oh, yeah. I had a roommate in college that had a whole wall full of David Lynch pictures. That would be a part of that education too, is that I learned who David Lynch was in those years of my life, right?
Yeah, very cool. And and Skye, who are some of the your favorite filmmakers, and screenwriters?
I fell in love with American Beauty and Alan Ball, 6 Feet Under. I think his writing style is beautiful and painful and all of the things, and has levity, which is always what I'm going for. But I love, Sofia Coppola. I love Lisa Cholodenko. I'm really just inspired by a lot of the female writers. My passion is on the writing side, so I usually follow the writer side. But Alan Ball's always up there. But more recently, I like the Coen brothers. I think Fargo is near perfection. But I love Sofia Coppola, and I love Lisa Cholodenko, and I was blessed to actually have her as my mentor, and I got to see her writing style through Sundance, and she is just top notch. She is thorough. She is dedicated to the story. She is dedicated to helping other up and coming writers, which I think is one of the best qualities. But she's research driven, and just a really, really detailed person who cares about every sentence on the page.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, so Sofia Coppola is amazing. Very cool. And and if you could partner with someone, like any director, who would it be?
Is that back to me?
Oh, Skye.
I'd probably go back to Sofia Coppola or Lisa as well. I love to see how women direct. I think it's a different craft, and I'm really excited to see the female production superstars on this call, because I think the way that women direct is different. The way that they're able to evoke their actors is it's just a different experience than what being on set early in my career was like. But I really I'd love to work with either of those ladies, I think so.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you. And let's see here. So, Kristen, do you ever pull from any other medium? So, like Tarantino in an interview once said that, he took 6 years of acting class. He never took like a writing course in his life, but that the years of experience from the acting class actually really helped him learn to write dialogue and everything. So, do you pull from anything else, like music or dance or any other?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think as a actor, like the dialogue comes the easiest for me. It's all the plot points that are the hardest, but the dialogue flows just because I think as an actor you work on that muscle. But music, that's an amazing inspiration too. I love listening to music while I write.
Cool. Very cool. What do you listen to?
Soundtracks from other movies.
Nice.
Yeah, just soundtrack music.
Soundtrack music is very inspiring. Cool. Okay. And Bethany, as an academic, what are some books on craft that you refer to while you're working? And do you have any recommendations for courses or anything, or books for screenwriters that are just starting out?
I love books. So we could probably do a whole session on that. I'm actually, right before we started here, I was going through my new textbook for my Intro to Film Studies class that I'm teaching this fall. It's the newest edition of this film, A Critical Introduction, which is an amazing text for an academic perspective for analyzing films. When it comes to writing, I like to take books about writing and apply them to screenwriting. I don't always reach for a screenwriting text. I'm like looking on my bookshelf so I can, if I can recall, there's a text called Bird by Bird. I can't remember the author.
Yeah.
You have that? I love that book. And it's not about screenwriting necessarily, but it's about sort of the process of writing and how you take it sort of as, who's the author? I forget.
It's Anne Lamott, Emily.
Oh, yes, Anne Lamott. Yes. One of my favorite books on writing. And the whole idea of the bird by bird is sort of like taking it step by step. And that's a lot of my process. It's like this ebb and flow when it comes to writing, like this period of sort of immersing myself in other great writing and media, and sort of doing a lot of writing in my head, and then sort of flowing it all out to the page and doing that bird by bird, doing that. And there's a whole story, if you read the book, about where that comes from. But I also really love Stephen King's On Writing, one of my favorite books on writing. So if that's not something that you've checked out, I'd definitely recommend it. And if people ask me, like, it is my favorite Stephen King book, but I very much love the self-awareness. I'm very self-aware in my own work. And so I like things that are, self-aware. So writing about writing is one of, sort of my favorite things. There's a book called On Filmmaking. Also can't remember the writer. Helped me a lot when I was first transitioning from writing into production, and how those two things sort of collaborate. But yeah, I could go on and on.
Awesome, thank you. That's great. And let's see. I don't know if I asked you this before, but any particular writers that inspire you, or that you, we could talk about screenwriters or just other writers that have kind of inspired you. Bethany, sorry, this is for you as well.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking writers generally, and we're not talking just screenwriters, one of my favorite writers of all time is Patti Smith, and she's a punk poet laureate. But I, time and time again, go back to reading her poetry, or I read some Rimbaud, which inspired her. I like to feel a part of sort of my own sort of lore of sort of this grand history of storytelling. I really love Allen Ginsberg, Walt Whitman. Leaves of Grass is, I'm actually using my giant Leaves of Grass as a podium for my computer right now. When it comes to filmmakers that I love, I really love the work of other, like I said, writer, director, performer females. Stories We Tell by Sarah Polley was a movie that changed my life. One of my hands down favorite films. I love the work of Miranda July, Lena Dunham. So these are sort of the people I reach for in my sort of my filmmaking space. So
thank you. That's awesome. That's very helpful. And Chaz, are you a member of any like writing groups or Facebook groups or anything? And have you ever worked with a writing partner? Do you prefer to collaborate, or do you typically write alone?
I like to write alone. As far as writing groups, I took screenwriting class at the University of Utah, and I had an instructor, Paul, and the way he went about it is just having table reads and getting feedback from other writers, which is something that like I think is very critical to do in the writing process. And a lot of those people, after we all left school, I still talk to them and still send them stuff. But I like to work alone. I don't think I can work with a writing partner just because I have stuff in mind. I'm very stubborn in that sense.
That's okay, and everybody has their own process.
Yeah, and I think I've joined a few writer groups on Facebook, but I never read their scripts and give feedback just because like it takes time, and I don't know. I'm more about like showing people my work and getting the feedback than like providing the feedback unless like I actually know them personally, because like I feel like if you know them more as a writer and as a person, like you can help them more in that sense rather than just getting it from a complete stranger and you're just like what are you going for, you know? Like, so I think it just depends on stuff.
Okay, cool, very cool, thank you. And so let's see here. Skye, are you well, you mentioned the research before, so I feel like we might know the answer to this, but are you more of a plotter or like a pantser?
Yeah, you can guess. No, I read as was said, I like a lot of autobiographical, or I like biographical. I'm definitely a plotter. I actually hated outlining, which is kind of funny because I love the research and love gathering research, but I really hated outlining. I felt like, oh, this is a means to an end. But my, I worked with my manager on how to really successfully outline. And once I got that down, I still hate it. I'm not going to pretend that it's great, but I have found that when I know where the story is going, it helps me avoid painting myself into a corner and really work through ways to improve the story. I used to, just free write. And then I found that I was putting everyone in a restaurant when I couldn't come up with another scene idea. So I think it's because I like to eat. So everyone was always eating in my stories. And I'm like, no, that's not great. I can do better. And so plotting it out, knowing where people are going, making sure that every scene is moving the story forward. That's what, plotting and outlining does for me. Obviously I still try to give myself grace and coming up with ideas on the fly and being open to things that I'm inspired by, of course. But I find that having a nice, at least scaffold of where I'm going is really, really important. And knowing the world, because I think people can tell, writing When the Men Were Gone, it took place in 1944. I had to look up when styrofoam was invented. I had to look up how football was played in 1944 versus today. And audience members know, and you might not think that's a wide group, but there are people that will know, and the authenticity comes to a head. And I think people appreciate the extra work that you do. I have people in my writing group. I do have a writing group and that I love and appreciate. And I absolutely recommend for those who like writing groups, but they do help me find ways to be spontaneous with my stories. And I do think there's people in that group that are so spontaneous and so great. I know it can work for different people, but for me, the plotting is a nice part of the toolkit.
Awesome, thank you. Another question for you, Skye.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to complete a screenplay from the writing portion onward?
So 10 weeks. And I can say that because UCLA, that's kind of the formula that they use. They're on quarter system, which is really, really fast. And so every 10 weeks, you're turning over another script. And actually, I was taking 3 writing classes at a time. So I was turning over 3 scripts every 10 weeks, TV or film. And now that's become kind of my formula. So I've got it down to the 10 weeks. And I know that 2 weeks of that is outlining and 8 weeks is writing. And if I follow that formula, it usually can happen in 10 weeks. So I've just kind of followed that. And I was going to say to your class question, UCLA does a professional program in screenwriting that's 100% online. And it is a really great step into the waters of screenwriting for anyone who is looking for a good class. It's taught the same way that they teach the MFA program at UCLA. And you'll get the exact same experience and the same teachers. And for, I don't even know how much less of a cost, but it's a great course if you're serious about screenwriting and want to, kind of up the skills that you have. So.
Very cool. Thank you. That's awesome. And then I guess, let's see here. If you want to answer the writer's block question as well, and then we'll jump to Kristen.
You asked
Sorry.
me what I do with
Oh, sorry.
Skye.
That's okay. So Kristen, yeah, how do you deal with writer's block and just kind of your writing process?
By listening to everybody in here talk about theirs and writing it down. Okay, this is how I should deal with it. I'm going through it right now. It sucks. And so I'm going to sign up for that UCLA class. Thanks.
Thank you, Skye.
Yeah, of course. I also teach a really, really inexpensive class with the Utah Art Film Center, not to promote, but also I love sharing what I learned at UCLA, and I'm more than happy to work with people. Like I love it. So I do a screenwriting from script to page kind of class too. So you can definitely check that out for very, very, very inexpensive opportunity too. And I will brain dump anything that I've learned at UCLA, and you won't have to pay $90,000.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Skye, where can people, if people watching this want to take your class, where can they find it? Their website we can go to?
Yeah, thank you. It's through the Utah Artist Foundry, which is part of the Utah Film Center. So if you go to Utah, I believe it's utahartistfoundry.org. There is a from script to page link, usually for my class. You can also check it out on my Instagram, Skye Courtney on Instagram, and I'll post about those too. But we did one session. We were getting ready for the second, and then COVID hit, so we're kind of reformatting and formulating to get everything virtual. But yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. It seems like a great resource. And let's see here. I think what time we have. Just one second. So, Bethany, if you could change one thing with how Hollywood currently operates, what would it be?
I mean, very easily, and I've said this all the time, that I don't realize why we put so much money into making franchise movies when you could break that down and make 100 micro budget films that are personal stories, that are character driven, that are kitchen sink dramas, which I love. I just think there's so much money that is allocated in ways that are entirely capitalistically driven and do not have the heart of art cinema in mind. I looked into the industry and having a job in the industry, and I had great experiences there, but ultimately it's what made me change career directions to academia, because I was like, here I can study the art of film and I can promote the art of film. When I saw some of the best content creators are still so heavily invested in the bottom line. And so I just think if there could be a renaissance of why we see films, why we make films, and people in powerful positions, the people who hold the money are not creative people. And so you might get very close to, having, that access, but at the bottom line, I just think that's what makes me sad about it, is that I feel like at the heart of it, it's driven by money, and it is a money-making, organism. But I would love to see, there's so much content we say now, but I just think that there's an ability for so much more eclectic content.
Cool, and I love that. And that's a good launching point for the next question. So I guess Chaz or Kristen, if you want to answer this. Yeah, just with streaming and with COVID, with everything going on, I've just been, reading reports. Unfortunately, a lot of the theaters are, suffering right now, taking really heavy losses just because they're not able to launch their films because of COVID. So, but that's all, we see like kind of Quibi and all these other new platforms kind of emerging out of this. So, Netflix, major player now. yeah, so I guess what are your hopes for the future with that, with your own films, and are there any particular platforms that you want to use for distribution in the future, or kind of where do you see that heading in the future?
Um, I don't know. After reading that Disney's going to release Mulan for $30 on top of their fee on their subscription service, I got really disheartened. But it goes back to being a franchise that Bethany was talking about. I think it'd be cool if, like, because like independent theaters, like in Utah, especially like the Tower and the Broadway, those are so fun. And I hope to see more of those rather than like mainstream, like commercialized theaters, unless it's IMAX, because IMAX is really cool. But um, I think it'd be kind of fun to like see those pop up and still support like the independent cinema. And even if they start their own streaming service, because I know Salt Lake Film Society has theirs going on now with you can watch films online. I think that's a new direction that, hopefully people can take advantage of.
Awesome, thank you. That's great. And you said the Utah Film Society is having this.
The Salt Lake Film Society, yeah.
Salt Lake Film Society. Yes, fantastic. Great group of people over there. And Kristen, yeah, kind of, where do you watch films and TV shows that you, any particular platforms that you're drawn to?
Oh my gosh, I am so basic. I'm just a Netflix girl. I love everything Chaz said though, and I guess I'm still in denial. I'm just hoping everything, gets back to normal as soon as possible. I don't know. I definitely am going to look into things more though.
Cool.
I'm gonna cry when the theaters open back up. I miss walking in and like all that stuff.
Me too.
I will say that I have taken my kids to see The Goonies and Jurassic Park, and that's fun in the theaters.
Very cool. And then another quick question for y'all. Just how, just in terms of like, do you do like a media cleanse when you start working on your project? Do you kind of not watch anything, or do you watch, what shows do you watch shows or listen to podcasts, or kind of what with your writing process when you're working on something new?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, we'll start with you and then
okay. When I'm working on a project, I try to watch as many films as I can to help inspire me.
Very cool. And Chad, what about you?
It depends. Sometimes if I have like a certain scene in mind that I kind of like have an idea of, I'll try to watch movies that have a similar thing to see how they're set up, or even read scripts to see how they're set up. I think reading other scripts is super beneficial just because you could see how exactly it conveys like onto the screen. And it's kind of like a fun side gig is just like watch, like, I mean, if you're watching like The Dark Knight and you watch that with like the script on your phone, it's really cool to compare that. And like, I know it kind of inspires you. And if you find music, it's kind of fun too. But I don't necessarily clean my plate off when I'm writing. I work on like 4 different projects at once. So like, it's never like, I never focus solely on one project.
Cool. No, that's super helpful. I love that idea of, another screenwriter I follow said, watch your favorite show and then, see if you can pinpoint like the sequences or, kind of how things change. So that's a great idea. And yeah, Skye, what about you? Do you do like a media cleanse, or is there any particular?
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I watch as much as I can. I consume as much as I can. I like Chaz's note. I was going to say that too, which is reading scripts. I think is the best work that you can do because the script actually will look a lot different than what ends up on the screen. And obviously with editing and time and different things, what the original vision to what came to fruition is really interesting kind of to cross compare. But I also find, art is kind of, it's kind of stealing, we all sort of steal, we borrow ideas, but you can also find really good inspiration if you're stuck on something you're trying to write or you're trying to make by finding it in another comp. That's what we call it, comps. Find comps for your story that you're trying to tell. So I was struggling to do a time sequence in my Sally Ride story, and so I did some research, and I found that the Imitation Game had a similar time sequence structure that I really liked, and so it helped me. I didn't do the exact same thing, but it helped me to find a version that made sense for my story. And I think scripts and produced work are great inspiration. They're also a really good idea for you to help other people understand the tone and the genre that you're going for. We always have to comp our stories. We always have to pitch it as, it's the Golden Girls meets Gossip Girl or whatever it is. And it's really nice to have those comps in mind so that you can pitch your story. You can make sure people know where you want to go with it, what kind of tone you're trying to set. So yeah, I definitely recommend reading scripts, watching shows that might resonate to your story, that might inspire your story. Definitely.
Awesome, thank you. And we have another audience question. So Skye, what is your preferred story structure?
My preferred story structure? Mm-hmm. Well, I primarily write film. I do some TV, and I'm doing more TV right now just because of the state of the world. So I'm working on an animated series right now and a comedy series. But usually I prefer to write film, and I typically write the 3-act structure and just, I follow the tentpole moments of, getting, starting late in your story and ending early. So I always try to start where, I don't give the whole backstory. I kick it into the action and what's going on with these people. I get in late into their lives, kick off the inciting incident, which sends them into, kind of an extraordinary set of circumstances. And then, hit their low point, and I try to make it as low as possible. Like, we're not coming out from this. And then on Act 3, I get out early. So I'm going to start late, get out early. There's one piece that I always follow in every story, and I like to tell this to other writers. I think it helps, but at UCLA, we're taught the beginning of your movie is the promise of the end. So my characters always come full circle. They don't end up in the same spot because they need to arc and they need to change, throughout their journey. But if I start on someone at, let's say, a high school dance, and then I end at maybe their high school reunion, they're at a dance or something like that, and we see the real trajectory, I think it gives a really nice pin on that moment of where we started and where we ended. So I always try to follow that as kind of a guidepost, and I think it helps me get through that tough act 2 that Chaz spoke about, where you're stuck because you're going to end on showing the evolution of your characters. So cool. That's kind of my path.
Awesome, and thank you so much. Let's talk about dialogue a little bit. Skye, if you want to start, and then we'll kind of go through. How do you wait till the end? Do you write your dialogue last, or do you? What's your process like?
Sorry, did you say how do I write dialogue? Is that the question?
What's your process like for writing dialogue? Uh-huh.
Yeah. First, it's to just establish the voices of the character, and that kind of goes into my research. They need to all have unique voices, and I'll think about where they're from. Do they have an accent? Are they male or female? How old are they? And I'll try to think about little tics or little habits I can give them in the way that they speak, and I try to just keep that consistent. And then again, listen to the way people around you speak and talk, because we tend to write people more formal than they actually do speak, and I try to just be natural, and I'll use examples from the way my friends speak to me or conversations I hear, and you just get in and get out. That's the way that human beings speak. We tend to be fast. I try to keep dialogue to a minimum. And then the best trick I've learned with dialogue is I will write my scene, and then I'll take the second or third characters out and just read one person's passage and listen to how that sounds, make sure it's consistent. And then I'll read another character's passage and make sure that sounds like a different person. So dialogue is tougher than I think I thought it would be. I know how to speak. People know how to, people around me talk. I think you think, oh, this is going to be easy, but I think there's a real art to dialogue, and if you nail it, it definitely heightens your script. But I think really taking each character for who they are, knowing their voice, what's unique about them, and the way that they speak and where they're from is really, really key.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Very helpful. And Bethany, we have another audience question for you. What is the biggest mistake that you've seen that student writers or directors make? Be ruthless, I'm sure.
Oh, I mean, I'm a big believer that, and I've made a lot of short films that people might call mistakes, but I think that, every perceived mistake is part of the journey to figuring out what it is that you do well, right? It is necessary. Trial and error is necessary in production. No one makes their first film and it comes out like, perfect, creation. There's so much education that happens in the process. So I really try to not focus my students to think about that making mistakes. Instead, it's very much learning opportunities, growth opportunities. But one of the things I really try to keep them from doing at the outset is taking on too much. I tell them what a writing teacher told me years ago about writing a short story, that you don't write a short story about World War II. You write it about a moment on the battlefield, and so students come in and they're excited and they have these big ideas, right? And I say, that's great that you have these big ideas. Now focus in and find a kernel that kind of represents the whole of that idea and try and execute that small piece, that moment on the battlefield with as much complexity as you can. Because I think the first thing, nothing can be more disheartening than having this passion project. You put it on the page and it's just like so dense, and then go through the experience of trying to manifest that vision and realize that you've written something that is entirely unproducible in the budget and time restraints that you've been given. And perhaps that's a necessary education, but I try to help them take on something that is manageable instead of taking on too much. It feels better to take on something really small and really think out every detail. So that's sort of the starting point, and I try to kind of veer them from that first mistake. But if they're unbridled, then that is the education that they're going to be set for. And there's a lot of talking afterwards about what did we learn, not like what colossal mistake did I make. It's what did I learn from putting this in action.
Cool, that's very helpful too. And yeah, it's kind of like I come from a poetry writing background. It's like every word counts, understanding that, less is more sometimes. So absolutely put. This question is for Kristen. The audience wants to know, what is the hardest part, or what was the hardest part of adapting your feature concept into a short proof of concept for Lumiere?
The short was actually the easiest part. So I'd had this vague idea since childhood. It was a recurring dream that I had. And I loved the fantasy aspect of that, of my childhood. And then I'm a mental health advocate and I wanted to marry the worlds together. And it felt so overwhelming. I've never done this before. I'm learning so much from this Zoom group. I was like, how do I even start to write a full feature-length film? And I'm like, I'm going to start with one scene and turn that into my short. And that's what I did.
Very cool. And it came through, and just watching it, like, I want to know more. It's the intrigue is there, but you've created that kind of like Hitchcock talked about with the bomb under the chair. When you're writing dialogue with your characters, just pretend like the bomb is under the chair. It just creates that intensity. So, and I've definitely felt that with your film.
Thank you. That's what I was going for. So thank you.
Awesome. So we have a few minutes remaining. Any particular things that you just want to share just along your journey as a creative to up and coming filmmakers out there?
I want to go on what Skye was talking about with research. because I was writing this horror script and I had to ask like how much damage could like a bow and arrow do to your leg, right? And it was like looking up like all these gruesome effects and just to be more realistic as possible. And then it occurred to me that if the FBI ever wanted to look at my search history, that it would be very dark and morbid. And so I'm surprised nobody's come out with like a Google of sorts of like writers' questions, so writers can resort to that.
Smart. That's your next invention. I love it. I had a friend who did the same thing. He was writing about a terrorist bomb, and he's like, "Do you think the FBI is coming to my house?" I'm like, "Probably, but it's for the art, so do the research." I will say to your earlier, I know you asked Chaz about writing partners and writing groups and things like that. I will say I use writing partners quite heavily. I think it's because naturally, I think multiple people on here spoke about how writing is very isolating and insular, and it feels like you're on an island by yourself. And that's not my personality. So for me, where I can collaborate, I love. And that's also why I like teaching, because I'm inspired by ideas and I like to share ideas. And for me, it strengthens me as a writer, I feel like. So I do have several collaborative scripts out there that have done well. And I'm writing one right now with a friend for Aquafina that we're really excited about for another development company. And it's a really fun process for me because I feel like when I start slacking, he picks up the slack and vice versa. And then we can bounce ideas off each other. And I do think Hollywood is very open to writing partnerships. So if you have someone in your circle that you trust and you are like-minded or can bring out the best in each other, I'd say, you definitely explore it. I think it can help if you feel like you need that collaboration. You don't want to be alone. And through UCLA, I found my writing group and we share and give notes. And that's a huge part of me getting better as a writer. I do not ascribe to know everything. And when I share my work and get notes back, it definitely improves my writing. And so I think finding a writer's group can be very beneficial. To Chaz's point, finding people that you trust that are going to give you helpful notes and good notes is key. So we try to facilitate that at the Utah Film Center and Utah Artist Foundry. UCLA can connect you different types of online classes that you take. Online writing classes are a great way to find a network and find people who will join your writers groups. So it doesn't always have to be strangers. You can actually, I'd say, take those classes, get involved, because the outcome can be more than just writing a script. It can be the connections that you make and the friends that you make. And so I think collaboration can still exist in this lonely world.
I love that.
So.
Yes, here. Awesome, very cool. Yeah, Bethany, do you have
Do I have any just final thoughts?
final thoughts?
I would just encourage people to experiment. I think we live in just an awesome age where we all have cameras in our pocket. So I kind of, every time I take a picture or every time I, even write an email, like I'm always thinking a little bit about craft, I'm thinking about composition a little bit. I'm sort of iron it into sort of my daily life. And I think it's really important for writers to keep like a journal, a writing journal. I do that. I always keep one on me. So if inspiration strikes anywhere, I'm always jotting things down. My first writing process is a method of madness where I have to write everything in my unreadable handwriting and then I can like put it into a script. So I always encourage my students to do that because so many things are lost if you're not sort of catching them along the way. So that would be my 2 cents.
Awesome, I love that. And keeping a journal, I think you're right. It's such a crucial, important thing because you never know when an idea might strike you. Okay.
I just want to say too, something that's helped me also is trying to understand the process of editing and directing. Because that way when you're writing, you know exactly how that would be shot or how that would be edited. And like, it kind of helps the flow better too. So that's my 2 cents.
Kristen, any final thoughts?
Now that I'm unmuted, My final thoughts are I want to pick all of your brains after this because this has just been great. I've learned a lot and I don't know how much I've contributed, but this is fun. And I definitely have gotten a taste of something that I want to be doing a lot more of.
Same. Open to collaboration. And I saw that you have Game of Thrones in the background.
Oh, did you see that? Game of Thrones chess, and we listen to the soundtrack while we play it. You should see how detailed
That's
these
awesome.
pieces
Very cool. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This has been a wonderful experience, extremely enlightening and uplifting and creative. It's wonderful to see you all have so many unique experiences and backgrounds, and I'm excited for the future for female filmmakers and for up-and-coming filmmakers. So thank you all for a wonderful meeting.
I think female filmmakers are badass. So
Thank you.
That's nice.
I feel honored to be in your guys' presence.
And supporters of female filmmakers are awesome. So love it.
Yeah.
This was great. This was really great, Emily. Thank you. This is, I think things like this are so important, and sometimes the moderators aren't thanked and the organizers, but the fact that you guys are doing this and connecting, people, sometimes they don't know the avenues in and where to ask questions and where to get more information. So the fact that you're doing this is fantastic. And thank you for including me.
Yes, thank you for being here. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet everyone here. It's awesome.
Nice to meet you guys
and
too.
Good luck, everyone. Tell your stories. It's important.
You too. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.